I'll start with a quick introduction about what we do and why we started today, and then it's mainly Ed, our keynote speaker for today, that'll cover everything for you. So about the event for today, our goal with this is to basically create a recurring event. So we want to do this every year, and basically the main goal is to connect investors and executives to give them informed on the latest innovations in terms of digital commerce. And for today, we specifically chose China because if I speak from my own personal experience, it's a hard market or industry to better understand, to cover, obviously from language, but also I think the European, especially international media, they don't cover as much, I would say. So that's why we chose it for as a topic for today. And Ed is a very experienced analyst in this. He also does trips over there. So yeah, I'm very excited to have him for today and also to get his insights. So those are the two things we have a small, how do you say? We break it up into two parts. So the first one is on opportunities, and then the second is more on the threats. Right, then a bit about Conway, so who we are. We started a bit over a year and a half ago. My background is in software development and in product management, and we specifically focus on consumer and retail companies because that's where our experience is, and that's what I'll briefly, 2 or 3 minutes, take you through. So what we do is we work with investors and executives looking to win in a digital age. That's sort of the shortest pitch I could give. And one of the reasons that we started doing that is that also from personal experience, one of my companies was acquired by a large corporate, and we always felt that it's quite hard, especially for people that are not from that world, to better understand how to tell the good from the bad technology. So that's what we often help investors with, to find it out, to open up the black box. Because that's often the problem that our clients encounter, is that technology is an engine for digital growth, but especially in the M&A process, it's often a black box, which can have very strong strategic implications. And that's a solution we'd like to provide, is that we serve as a technology partner on their side, just that they have legal or financial advisors. And we can serve based on our experience on independent decision making, and also from a risk perspective, but also from opportunities perspective. Who we are and what we do is we are a boutique consultancy for digital commerce specifically. And I think one of the key drivers for what we do, why we do that, is that what we've learned from ourselves is that technology often is the backbone of a modern business. And if you don't align that well and you don't make that part of an operating model, it's going to be a blocker for your growth. That's where our experience is. Martin and myself. Martin over there is we've both served as digital executives in fast-growing companies, and I think that's the basis of what we do with consultancy, is to share those experiences, sometimes war stories as well, to help our clients with that. And what we specifically do is independent advice on strategy, technology, and data, specifically for those 3 areas, often to investors, but also to executives, specifically in digital commerce. One client that I just wanted to highlight as an example is Marie Salamaris, which is a Dutch-based water and personal care brand. And one of the strategic challenges that they had is they wanted to go from a wholesale strategy more to a direct-to-consumer strategy. So that's why we help them on the strategy side. But then also you encounter what type of technology stack you actually need for that. That's very different from a wholesale company versus a direct-to-consumer company. So we also help them to streamline that and to basically set up for this different strategy and how to align their operating model for that. What we offer specifically are basically 2 things. Pre-acquisition, we often start with a quick scan, so to help you understand what are specific red flags when acquiring or investing in a specific company. And then often post-acquisition, we follow up with an action plan. But also if there are specific portfolio companies that are a bit behind on growth, we can actually help with a specific growth scan to identify those blockers and to see why the growth path is not up to ambition, basically. So those are the 2 key things that we now focus on. And then later, if that goes well, we can also help with a value creation program. And that's in these steps. So what I already mentioned, first step is basically quick scan pre-acquisition, and then a growth scan post-acquisition for a portfolio company. That's it from my side. So that's about Conway. Feel free to reach out, but those are the things that we currently do. Then I'll hand it over to Ed.
Thanks for coming. Thanks to Conway to invite me here to talk to you people about China. It's where I'm going to be taking you. As a matter of fact, what you're going to get today is like a master class. It's going to be 2 sessions with a break in between, so you can listen to some other people than me, both about 45 minutes. So before the break, we'll talk about opportunities and the inspiration that you can get from China, especially new forms of e-commerce that we quite often don't know yet. And after the break, we look at the threats because the Chinese are coming. Maybe they're already here. We'll see. I'll end before the break with a bit of a cliffhanger. So before the break, I'm going to tell you about these new forms of e-commerce and how in China the market and the internet companies are constantly changing and adapting to new circumstances, but also to maximize customer value based on the data that they gather. So that's what I'll be talking about in the beginning. My name, Ed Sander, for people that read Chinese, Aide, that's my Chinese name. I lived in China for a couple of years, and I've been writing a lot about China for our own website, ChinaTalk.nl, but also for TechBus China, which is a TechBus China insider newsletter specifically for investors also, where we use a lot of more insider intelligence. So in this, what I also do is things like today, so keynote speeches. So I talk a lot to different audiences about China. And before COVID, I actually used to take people like you to China for a study tour. And then in the morning in the hotel, I would do a presentation like I will be doing today. And then in the afternoon, we would go into the city to actually experience all of that. Hasn't been possible for 3 years now, but it looks like we will be able to start this up again in the second half of the year. So that's been a long wait, but I'm really looking forward to do that again because it's one of the most fun things that I've done in my life. So again, before the break, the evolution of e-commerce in China. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what happened, especially in the last 10 years. I'm going to share some learnings from new retail, C2M, live commerce, some ecosystems, and we'll move into what is coming after the break with e-commerce cross-border from China. Now, I could easily talk about all of these subjects as well as all of the subjects and the companies that I'll be talking about after the break for an hour or more. I won't put you through that kind of torture. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to give you the highlights of these developments. But there's much more to learn. So if you're really interested in some of these topics, at the end of the second presentation, I'll show you a QR code. If you scan that, I'll send you a PDF with the handouts of all of these slides. So you don't have to take notes or pictures, will all be sent to you. And I will send you links to more archives with a lot of articles I wrote about all of this. So you can dive even deeper if you want to. But let's start by looking at e-commerce in China. So in 2005, the e-commerce market in China was only 0.4% of the total global e-commerce market. If you fast forward a bit, about 10 years later, it's the biggest e-commerce market in the world. Now, of course, you might say, well, that's 1.4 billion people, so that's not so strange, but the speed with which this happened is very impressive. And as a matter of fact, if you look at the Chinese market for e-commerce, it's bigger than the next 9 markets added up together. So it's incredibly large. But more interesting than those figures about the size of the market is actually what's been happening in the past 10 years, because e-commerce began a bit like we know it, but it's evolved in very different forms of e-commerce. Now, 10 years ago, yesterday I had dinner with some people from the Alibaba office here in the Netherlands. We sort of were talking about the good old days when they still had 80% market share in China. And that was through their websites, Taobao. It's just a C2C platform, basically, comparable with eBay and Tmall. The second biggest party was Jingdong, JD.com. At that time, a bit less than 9%. So that's the second biggest one. And nowadays, these companies are described as being shelf commerce. Have you heard about the term shelf commerce? So shelf commerce is not really known here because we don't have really a lot to differentiate from the way that we still do e-commerce. But shelf commerce, basically, you can understand as follows. It is people searching for products. And it's basically you have a very clear purchase intention. You are looking for a specific product and you go to a website. What you normally do is you go to the search bar at the top. That's why all of the platforms that we normally use have a very prominent search bar at the top. And in China, 93% of the people that use an app like this find their products through a keyword search. So that's, again, that's people searching and finding products. What you need to be able to do that is a very strong search engine so that people that enter your app can quickly find the right products. This is in China already sort of considered to be old-fashioned. And I'll show you what it turned into in a bit. But if you now look at the market, what it looks now today, what it looks like today, you'll see a couple of things. Now, I don't have the figures for 2022 yet, but these are the estimated figures. Some of these big companies are not very sharing a lot of data anymore, but Alibaba has lost a lot of market share. Don't feel too sorry for them because the market kept on growing and Alibaba has also kept on growing. But as far as market share is concerned, it lost some to Jingdong. But the most interesting thing is that here you still had a very fragmented market with very small, relatively small companies. Even Amazon had less than 1% market share in China. And those have mostly disappeared into this other group. So they've lost market share. And there's three totally new players that weren't even there 10 years ago. Pinduoduo, Douyin, and Kuaishou. And I'll tell you all about these different companies and why they became so big so quickly. One of the things that happened because of all of these new parties, but also new forms of e-commerce entering the market, was that the costs of acquisitions of new customers began rising very sharply, especially after 2014, as you can see here. So in 2015, 2016, it was getting really hard and very expensive for Chinese internet companies to acquire new customers. And that resulted in a form of e-commerce you might have heard about already a bit. It's called new retail. So basically these internet companies realized if it's getting so expensive to find a new customer online, maybe we should find them offline and convert them to online. So back in 2016, Jack Ma, he said, in the future, there will be no more online or offline retail. There will only be new retail. Well, what did he mean by this? Well, we are still maybe thinking in terms of online, omni-channel, multi-channel, but within new retail, these channels completely merge. So as I was telling Jons earlier on today, is in China, you could go into a shop and you would have a cloud shelf with the long tail of products that are not actually available in the shop. And you could, on that cloud shelf, you could bring up a QR code, scan the QR code, and it would be delivered to you at home in the evening. So that's a form of new retail. Another form of new retail which appeared was this. Because you have a lot of small pop-up-mom shops and a lot of convenience stores in China. And there's not a lot of concentration of different brands that are active in retail. So Alibaba actually went to these small convenience stores and pop-up-mom shops and they said, what we can do is we can turn you into a Tmall shop. You will get a nice sign. Tmall, a very popular, very well-known and respected brand. So if you present yourself as sort of the franchisor of Tmall, you will gain more business. The only thing you have to do, of course, is you will have to buy your products with our wholesale platform, Linksotong, and you will have to use Alipay, which is our payment system. And thereby they, of course, started gathering more data from people that were buying offline. But it also worked the other way around, because what they also said to these convenience store owners is we know exactly what the people around your store are buying online. We know what the popular products are. So what we can do is we can tell you what is missing in your store and what you should put on your shelves. And then thereby we can increase your revenue. And the same thing actually happened with Jingdong as well. Their system is called Xintongru. And then you get to be a JD.com shop. So that's one of the things that happened with this new retail movement. Another thing that happened is a shop You might think this is HEMA. There were quite a few journalists at the time that thought that HEMA was becoming active in China, but in Chinese you actually pronounce it Gema, and it's wordplay on the Chinese word for hippo. So in English it's also called Fresh Hippo, this store. And it became the most popular and the biggest fresh food supermarket. Now, what does that mean? If you go into one of those Gema stores, and I think the first one was launched back in 2016, you can actually see a lot of these tanks, fish tanks with fresh fish, crabs, lobster that are still crawling around in these fish tanks. And Chinese people are really crazy about really fresh food. So you could go into one of those stores and you could decide to take one of those lobsters or crabs or fish home, but if your cooking skills were not that good, you could also decide to have the staff in that store actually prepare it for you. And you could eat it there. So it was a supermarket with a catering at the same time. Now, if you did that a couple of times, you would see that there was much more in the store, a lot of interesting high quality products, a lot of imported goods as well. But if you walk around in one of those stores, you also find out that there's something happening under the ceiling, because you've got this conveyor belt system that is running through the whole store under the ceiling. And that is something that is for the people that shop online, that buy online. Because actually it's not just a supermarket, it's not just a restaurant, it is also a fulfillment center. So it does the logistics. So as a consumer, especially if you've been to one of those shops a couple of times and you trust the brand, you trust the supermarket, you can simply order through the Gema app. Just in your, from the couch at home and have it delivered to you. If you walk into one of those Gema stores, one of the things that you will find is there's a lot of staff running around, but they're not really stocking the shelves. What they are actually doing is they are order picking. They have these handheld devices, and the orders for the of the customers that come in through the app come on their handheld device, and they pick it in their part of the store. And in that conveyor belt system, it goes to the warehouse on the back of the store. Different bags from different parts of the store are actually coming in, are being consolidated, and then you'll have a small army of delivery guys, kuaidi as they call them in Chinese, waiting at the back of the Gema to bring it to your home within 30 minutes. So it might not be as fast as the flash delivery guys that we have here in the Netherlands, but still quite fast, within 3 kilometers, and most of the time also for free if you order above a certain level. Now, this has become really, really popular, especially in the bigger cities, in the first tier cities, as they call them in China, where you have a high population density. That's where this system works very well. So you have about 300 of these stores, and they're actually so popular that some people are actually looking to buy a house that is within that 3 kilometer range. And the house prices, I think, have even gone up because of that around these Gema stores. So that's one of the things that happened when there was stagnation in the growth of the online market and the rising customer acquisition cost. But what also happened is, even with new retail, most of this takes place in the larger cities that you can find around the east coast of China. And when the e-commerce started to get saturated, another thing that they could do is they could go inland. So go to the rural areas and find new customers that were not online and were not shopping online yet, because you might have been to Shanghai, and this is the skyline that we all know about, but a large part of the Chinese population still lives in these kinds of circumstances. As a matter of fact, if you go and look at the division of the different types of cities, those first tier cities are Shanghai, Beijing, Shenzhen, Guangzhou. Then these are normally the capitals of the provinces. And fourth tier cities are considered to be small cities in China. My own parents-in-law, I'm married to a Chinese lady. My own parents-in-law live in Datong, which is a fourth tier city, which means that it only has 2 million inhabitants. And then it goes to 5, 6, 7 tier city, etc. But actually, more than 500 million people are still living in the countryside, in small villages. And those people, most of the time, were not shopping as much online. And a lot of them were still coming online, actually getting internet access through their smartphones. But a thing that you need to do is, these people have a lower disposable income. So how can you get the prices down to get them interested? And that is another thing that happened, that's consumer to manufacturer, C2M. I myself prefer F2C, factory to consumer. And this is basically how it works. So this is the model that we normally know, right? You have a trademark, a brand, and they buy from a farmer or they buy from a factory that gets to a central warehouse, a regional warehouse, gets distributed to a store, and people would go to the store, or maybe even an online shop. The disadvantage of this is that the actual price that the factory is selling it for, 1 renminbi, is about 8 renminbi by the time it reaches the Chinese consumer. Because all of these different chains, they all have to have their own margin. There's a lot of cost added in logistics. So you need to get this down to get the people in the countryside interested. So what they did is they came up with a different model where a platform, and I'll show you one example in a bit, a platform is aggregating demand. Basically, they are saying we need like commodity products, and we can get a lot of volume and we can sort of sell that volume back, we can shift that volume back to the farmer or to the factory. And instead of using that old chain of retailers and wholesalers, that factory or farmer ships it straight to the consumer. So, which is incredibly cheap in China. So it only adds a bit of costs. So what the additional costs are a commission for the platform and the postage cost. And then it's only 2 renminbi compared to 8 renminbi. Now, one of the platforms, that's called C2M. C2M because of the movement from demand from consumers to the factories, instead of trying to push what you've already manufactured to the consumers, or F2C, factory to consumer, for the direct shipments. Now, the platform that has been really successful doing this is a company called Pinduoduo. And you'll hear that name again also after the break. And if you go into the Pinduoduo app, I'll break this down a bit so you can understand how this works. This is the screen that most of the e-commerce takes place on smartphones, of course. This is a screen that you'll see, and the regular price, basically what they say is these are sneakers. Most of the times these sneakers are produced by companies that also work for Nike, Adidas, Fila, all of those bigger brands. So they can make very good products, but they cannot sell that under those big brand names. But they can produce comparable goods for a regular price of 12 euro for a pair of sneakers. But then they say, you know what? If you buy it with somebody else, then it's only 9 euros. And if you still have a coupon, you normally, when you download an app, you get a coupon for your first purchase, then it's only 8 euro converted into euros. So they will show you the quantity of these shoes that have already been sold. That gives you more trust to actually go and buy it yourself. Initially, in the beginning, this company, Pinduoduo, what they did is they incentivized you to actually ask your friends and family and colleagues to join you in team buying. But that's not really necessary anymore nowadays, because there's so many people using this platform that you can simply start a new team purchase. Or if it's a popular product like this one, there is already somebody that says, I want to buy this product. Who wants to buy this with me? It doesn't have to be a person you know. It could be somebody living on the other side of China. So, and then you can simply join this person's team purchase, and then you will both get it for at least for 9 euros. Really cheap. Because these apps work with impulse buying, not so much the shelf commerce where you look for a specific product, every single purchase is immediately paid for and processed. There's no shopping basket. Sometimes compare it like, it's almost like you walk into an Action store here in the Netherlands and you see all of these things and that you really don't need, but they're so cheap that you just have to buy it, and you come home with 2 bags of junk that you probably never use. But that's how this app also works. They don't want you to think again about, maybe I don't need this. Immediately you basically pay for it and you buy it. So that's how C2M works.
So how does the team purchase beneficial to the Pinduoduo?
Well, basically what they do is they aggregate demand. So instead of one person buying, that always needs to be, in this case, two people, but sometimes it needs to be more.
Yeah.
So they sort of aggregate demand, and the advantage for the consumer is that you will get a lower price if you join up with a team. And thereby they increase the total demand that they can sort of give back to the manufacturer, also based on search engine advertising.
Yeah, but that is because there is somewhere in the logistics chain optimization or something like that.
Yeah, actually the way it works, this is almost just a fictitious price. Nobody really buys it for this. So but you get the feeling as a consumer, because you could buy it. If you hit this button, you can buy it for 88 without joining up with nobody whatsoever. But it is presented in a way that you get a lower price if you team up, and thereby they increase the number of people that will want to buy it.
Basically just an argument.
Yeah. True, yeah. So,
So delivery costs are extremely low.
It's really low.
How come?
Yeah. The labor costs in China are really low. There's also a lot of delivery companies that compete very fiercely, so they keep the price also very low. And it's also a matter of volume, because this company, Pinduoduo, 1/3 of all packages that are being sent in China comes from this platform. So the volumes that they can also get from the courier companies, the express companies, are enormous, and that's another reason why they can keep the price really low. Yeah. So, like I said, it's very much impulse buying. So, especially if you looked at the first versions of this app, you don't have that search bar here at the top. That search bar was actually here at the bottom, quite hidden, because they don't want you to search for products. They want you to browse and scroll through loads and loads of products. So, only in this kind of app in Pinduoduo, there's only 45% of people that actually find a product through search, and the rest through browsing and being inspired, so to speak. And this is based on a different type of getting people to buy, which is called interest-based commerce or content e-commerce. And the idea behind it is products that find people. People don't enter this app to find a product. No, they get presented with the right product. So it's algorithm recommendation engine based. So instead of having a very good search engine, which you'll still need for that part in the bottom, you need a very strong recommendation engine that serves the right products to these consumers. Now, to do that, you need a lot of data. So one of the things they do is they get a lot of consumers in by giving all kinds of incentives. Sometimes even like the first purchase for free. And then once you start using the app, there is something that I personally think is almost devious, and that is gamification. You very quickly get sucked into all kinds of games that have you spend a lot of time on the app. You can shake your phone, and then you can win microcredits, or you can pick a type of fruit, for instance, mangoes, and then you can grow a mango tree, and by the time it's fully grown, you get those mangoes shipped to you for free. That's cool, right? Or you can play a Candy Crush kind of game. And a lot of people spend hours and hours and hours playing these games. But why is it so devious? Because in the beginning, you get very fast, quite close to your goal. You always need to reach, for instance, a certain amount of fully grown tree or a certain amount of cash that you generated before you can have a payout. So that might be 100 RMB, and you start with 90. So you're already there, 90% of your goal. But it gets progressively harder as you get closer to your goal. And then they say, well, you can speed this up if you invite your friends to download this app. And if you invite your friends to play this game with you together. Or you get extra water drops to grow your tree faster if you come back every 6 hours. So 4 times a day. Yeah.
I used to work for a gaming company, and it's amazing. So a lot of people use this and spend money. It's amazing. The target for these gaming companies, this is not gaming company, but in general is the whales. And often people with a lot of income will spend sometimes 5,000 to 10,000 euros a day on microtransactions.
Yeah.
It is so addictive. you stop thinking about money, you
Yeah.
stop thinking about anything. This is just so much fun. It's a game, it's a game, it's a game.
Yeah, yeah.
And it constantly keeps taking cents over cents.
Correct. And actually, this Pinduoduo company is a merger between an e-commerce company and a gaming company, and they together created this. So you have to come back several times a day. Then also, what they do is sometimes they say you can get fertilizer for your tree and grow it faster, but you'll have to watch products. You have to scroll through a feed of products for 2 minutes. And if you start doing that and you stop scrolling, then the timer at the top will stop as well. So you really have to go through that for. And of course, you will probably, because of the algorithm, the recommendation engine behind it, see products that you find interesting, and you will start buying things or clicking on things and thereby feed the algorithm again. A lot of these games, you also have to pick a type of product, and by the type of product that you pick, you also feed data again into the recommendation engine. So then, when you start one of those games and you start growing a tree, before you know it, you're raising pigs, you're raising cows, you're farming all kinds of grain. So you get sucked into different games and spend even more time on this. And it is, at the end of the day, really hard to actually get to those rewards without doing all of this. And if you look at this, what you're actually doing is you are doing the marketing for Pinduoduo. And what they have to pay you to do that is really, really low. So their customer acquisition cost, if you compare that to Alibaba and JD, especially in the beginning, was extremely low. It only cost them $2 to get a new customer. Why? Because the so-called K factor, the number of new users that acquire another new user for you, in the beginning was never less than 1. So the user base was growing itself. So also, because of all of those games, people were opening the app so often that if you compared if you took the monthly active users of the app and you divided the daily active users by the monthly active users, you could see that the stickiness of the app was really high. A very high, the app in China with the highest number of people that opened the app every single day. So,
Can I have a question as well? Does it basically mean is that this is more geared towards people that have more time than money? Basically and therefore they spend the time in the app, train their algorithm, and therefore even the small money that they do have, they still buy something.
Correct. It's a low prices and a lot of time that they have available, because this doesn't work as well in the larger cities.
Okay.
In the larger cities, a concept like Gema, which is about convenience and not having to spend a lot of time going to the store, works much better. That's correct. Yeah. So this company is really successful. They have about the same number of users as Alibaba. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that people spend a lot less on Pinduoduo because it's such small purchases, such small amounts than on Alibaba. They spend like 3, 4, 5 times more on Alibaba. So take that into consideration if you just look at the user numbers.
What is this in euros? The 2,800?
You have to divide it by 7, so to get to euros. Yeah. So that's the annual amount that the average user will spend. So
I do think it's important to also set a little bit the context in terms of size. Do you mention later anything about Singles Day? Because the latest Singles Day, for example, for JD was very interesting. Just to talk about scope.
Yeah, I'm not including Singles Day in here because Singles Day is actually already a bit of old-fashioned shelf commerce. And as a matter of fact, both JD and Alibaba didn't even release their GMV figures because probably it was flat or even going down the last year. And what they've been doing, and that's why I think that it's a bit of a controversial topic, Singles Day used to be 1 day. Now it's 3 weeks.
It's 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I think JD for 2021, I think it was 139 billion.
Yeah,
over
could,
3 weeks.
yeah, could be. I've got some in this section on live commerce. I've got some figures for live streamers that are using Singles Day. So.
Do you also have an indication of the average salary of rural areas versus large cities?
I have that, but not in these slides. I think that the average salary in cities is about 5,000 renminbi. And it's probably about half in rural areas. But still, there's some people that, if you go to real rural areas, that can just basically just survive. There's no more poverty that people don't have enough to eat. But the poorest people can just only basically survive by basically growing their own crops. So that's a big difference. Yeah. So we've seen new retail and we've seen C2M as a reaction to what was happening in the market. With these new types of companies that were much more based on content, like for instance these games, Alibaba started to realize, well, we've got a bit of a problem because people don't come to our websites to be entertained. So e-commerce by itself doesn't generate traffic unless you have, like for instance, gamification. Then acquiring traffic is getting really expensive. Also, how do we get people to visit and to come to our website and to stay there for a long time if we're being based on shelf e-commerce? And then they realized we need content. So Alibaba was actually one of the first companies that started live commerce, live streaming e-commerce. And it's enormous in China. About 25% of all the e-commerce sales are being generated through live commerce. Now, for the people that don't know live commerce, you've probably already seen a bit also happening on Amazon and on Facebook. I'll show you two examples. Here on the left, you'll see Vaya. She was the biggest live streamer before she got caught in a tax evasion scandal. And the guy on the left is Li Jiaqi. And they were, and he still is probably, the biggest earning live streamers. Now, what happened is basically Alibaba was an incubator for these types of live stream hosts. And they made sure that they would get a lot of traffic. So the platform really supported them and built them. Also, one thing that is really different compared to some influencers that you see in the West is they have very good entertaining skills to keep people glued to the screen. Both of them were previously salespersons. So they had their own shops. Vaya used to have a clothing shop. Li Jiaqi worked in a beauty care shop. So they know how to sell. But the most important thing is that they also have a team of hundreds of people behind them that make the product selections for them. And they also negotiate with all of the brands because they have so many followers that they get the best bargains from the brand. And this is what normally also is missing in the West. Because of the best selection of products at the best price that you will not find anywhere else in the market, consumers have a lot of trust. And that's why a lot of Chinese people watch these live streams, and so much is being sold through these live streams. So these two guys, you can see the number of followers, you can see the GMV that they were generating. And in 2020, they did $8 billion just by the two of them, of course, with their team. And coming back to Singles Day, in 2011, in the pre-sale of Singles Day, they sold more than 3 billion in their live streams. So this is how enormous this is.
But that then feeds the how do you say, the team of a couple of hundred you mentioned behind that basically. Right?
Yeah.
It's not maybe that's a bit of a different view that people have, not a single person in a room making something. No. It is a massive thing behind it as well.
Yeah. It's the whole production team, the selection team, because Vaya and Li Jiaqi didn't do those negotiations themselves, but it's because of them that they could their team could get the best prices.
Because that's currently where we're at the state, is that it is some random one person on Instagram sort of trying to do this, but that's very
correct.
Different setup.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Every now and then you have a company sort of leading.
Yeah. So, by the way, yeah.
So,
sorry.
yeah.
The platform they're doing that on, is that actually the shop itself, or?
I'll have that in the next slide for you. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
So Alibaba with Taobao was one of the first ones to actually Mogujie was the first one, but Alibaba was the one that really built this very big. But an interesting thing is that two other companies followed as well. That's Kuaishou and Douyin, and you probably recognize this logo as TikTok. So Douyin is a Chinese version of TikTok. Both apps are being are made by ByteDance. And what happened is, to answer your question also, there's basically two things that happened. You had these traditional e-commerce platforms, and they started to do video. So within the Taobao app or the JD app or the Pinduoduo app, you would have like a different tab in the app to watch live streams. And also, if you would browse through the apps, you would be pushed basically by advertising towards these different live streams. On the other hand, you had short video apps. They already did video and they started to sell products. So you had two different movements at the same time. And this is why, if you remember that slide, that pie chart that I showed you in the beginning, this is why now these two companies have a large chunk of the market. And they basically took that away from Alibaba as well. Douyin, as a matter of fact, the latest figures that I've seen for last year has 10% market share now in e-commerce by just doing live commerce, mostly. Yeah. Another thing why this is working really well in China and not so well here. Here on the left is, I need to check if I have the sound turned off. Oh, let's just see. Otherwise you get a lot of Chinese. That might be fun as well. Let's see. No, okay, the quiet version. So this is actually a farmer that is live streaming how he's harvesting berries. And if you think, oh, this looks quite interesting, I want to buy that, you click on the product and you come to the product page, picture in picture, you will continue seeing the live stream. You can immediately say, you know what, I want to buy this product. You put it in your basket and you can go to checkout. And if you go to checkout, you will also be able to pay with Alipay or with WeChat Pay, so the two mobile payment options. And you haven't left the app at all. You can click buy, and if you bought before, your address is already in the app. So regardless who the seller is, you can simply, within the app, buy it, and then you just swipe to the next one. So this is how quickly it goes. Now TikTok did a test with Walmart, where they also did their first live stream. I think it was back in 2020. Or 21. And if you watch their live stream, they actually have the product assortment in there. If you find an interesting product, then you see you actually sort of leave the app and you go to probably the mobile website of Walmart. So if you now want to buy this and you say add to cart and you say check out, let's check out. What actually happens is, you need to log in to your Walmart account. And if you don't have a Walmart account, you first need to create a Walmart account. So it's not as seamlessly integrated in the same app. You basically have to go to a different app. And this is also one of the reasons why live commerce so far hasn't really taken off as well as in China.
But it's also partially about consolidation. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
For example, Tencent, JD, they all own a lot of different things. Effectively, once you create an account, you've created an account over a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So that way, it's very easy to have a seamless. But here, market is a lot more fragmented. If somebody has a TikTok account, could be further away from Walmart.
Correct.
So it's very difficult to integrate.
Exactly. That's what I'm going to show in a bit as well. So we all know that TikTok can create very good recommendations in videos. So anybody here that is using TikTok a lot knows that once you use the app for a couple of days, it's getting very addictive because of the recommendation engine. So also, at the same time, if TikTok knows what your interest is in what videos you're watching, they can find related products for you and then start serving that as part of your feed. This is actually something that is already happening in TikTok in the West as well. But is really big in Douyin. So this is also why they call it interest-based or content-based e-commerce. It's based on your interest that they sort of distill from watching different types of videos. In China, it is even grown much further into a situation where you can watch a video and then click on a button and then actually order food in Douyin and have it home delivered. Or you can download a coupon that you can take to an offline store and get a discount there. So live services, as they call it, have started to integrate in Douyin already. So now you can go into your local city menu, also location-based, and they will tell you, if you click here, okay, you want to book a hotel, you can simply book a hotel inside Douyin. Live services already integrated. And this is something that they're also testing with in the UK already. Now, it's not just restaurants, it's not just hotels. You can beauty parlors, massage parlors, you can go to a karaoke bar, whatever. You can all find it and book it in Douyin. And why do you see these adverts? Based on the interests that you have watched in the app. So again, this is what it used to be. This is what it is now. These are the new types of e-commerce that have taken a large chunk of the market. Now, as you said, it's about consolidation. It's about ecosystems. And this is basically how it works. Let's go back to that Germa store. You come into a Germa store, you see that lobster, you think that's great. I'll have it prepared here. Oh, this is actually quite a cool store. They have a lot of interesting products, also imported from the West. You go and shop a couple of times there, and then you think, you know what? I save a lot of time if I do that in the app. And once you have that app installed, if you don't have any other Alibaba apps yet, you get sucked into the whole ecosystem. So you might come in through Germa here or there, physical retail or online retail, and then you get sucked into social apps like Youku for video, Weibo for microblogging. You have a payment system. You have Ele.me for meal delivery. You have Didi for like the Chinese Uber. So there's all of these different systems that are also interconnected, and you can jump from one platform to another very easily, and it's all based on a generic user ID. So it might well be that I know that they are profitable now, but for 7 years, Germa was not profitable. But it didn't matter because it was an entry point to acquire these customers and suck them into the rest of your ecosystem. And Tencent, the company behind WeChat, and Jingdong, JD, are basically doing the same thing in their partnership, and they have a same type of ecosystem. Now you might think, okay, that's all interesting, but you don't live in China, so is this really important to you? You're not going to use these apps? Okay, it's inspiring, but so what? Why do I have to know about this? Well, that's the cliffhanger, because I don't think that this will stay in China. As a matter of fact, what I'll explain you after the break, this is coming our way, and it will leave China, and it's already here, and it's coming even more our way. And I'll tell you about it after the break. Okay? Yeah.